First off, there are 4 routes to registration for international medical graduates. The first route is more commonly known as PLAB. This is the Professional and Linguistics Assessment Board. Then we have the sponsorship scheme through the college. Then we have postgraduate qualifications route or PGQ route, followed by the AOR route, acceptable overseas registration examination. So if we first look at the PLAB test, so this is a test that the GMC run. There are 2 parts to this test, part 1, which is written, and part 2, which is an OSCE test. And part 1 is made up of 180 multiple choice questions, and part 2 is a structured clinical examination or an OSCE that is run at the GMC's Clinical Assessment Centre in Manchester. Doctors who are applying for this route must pass both part 1 and part 2 of the examination, and this will give them full registration to practice in the UK. Also, for the other routes, there's usually an identity check. This identity check does not take place following provisional registration for PLAB, as the identity check is done at the GMC when they are writing part 2. Then we have the PGQ route or the postgraduate qualifications. This is through the college part. You need to pass part 1 and part 2 of the fellowship examinations at the college. It is by examination only. This will also grant you full registration with license to practice in the UK. Then have the AOR route or the Acceptable Overseas Registration Examination route. This is the newest route to registration at the GMC. It was brought in last year, so 2021. And in order to be eligible to get registration as an international medical graduate through this route, you will need to have passed either the United States Medical Licensing Examination, Step 1, Step 2, and this needs to have been done before the 13th of March 2020. They also consider the Medical Council of Canada qualification examination taken in English on or before October 2020, or the Australian Medical Council examination on or before the 5th of March 2020. So for any of those routes, or if you have an international medical graduate who is not eligible for sponsorship or MTI, they will need to consider one of those 3 routes above. These 3 routes are looked after by the GMC directly, and any inquiries regarding these routes should go to img@gmc-uk.org. This is their international medical graduates team, and they would be happy to provide any further information on the 3 routes above. So moving on, and I'm here today to discuss the college sponsorship scheme and the MTI scheme and the expectations and what to look for in a candidate in order to ensure that the process does move as quickly as possible. So first off, the college have a very good relationship with the GMC and their international medical graduates team. We sponsor full registration only. We do not sponsor specialist registration. So first off, your international medical graduate will be only eligible for full registration should they wish to come work in the UK. In order to be eligible for specialist registration, they will need to go through CCT or CSER. When we look at both the MTI and sponsorship scheme, we do sponsor directly to the GMC, and this is where the word sponsorship comes from within the team. We have terms with the GMC, and that means that we need to ensure that the certain checks are made before we issue a certificate of sponsorship or before we put forward a international medical graduate to join the register. So I'm going to go through each and every one of these requirements, and if you have any questions, do let me know. So the first thing that the international medical graduate needs to have would be a primary medical qualification. We ask that all international medical graduates verify their primary medical qualification and send the verification email to the GMC. And then what we do is we ask them to screenshot the verification portal. And this also just lets us know that the checks have been made and the report has been sent to the GMC. We do not collect a report because this also does cost the international medical graduate, I think it's about £300 more to send 2 reports. And the GMC are happy for us just to check that the report has been sent by checking the screenshots and checking the portal that they have submitted to us. So in doctors who have qualified at a medical school outside of the UK, EEA or Switzerland, and a national of a country outside of the UK, EEA or Switzerland, and who have graduated from a medical school outside of the UK, and doctors who do not hold provisional registration with license to practice, all those international medical graduates will need to verify their primary medical qualification. So this is the first check that we look at the college and the first piece of evidence that we require an international medical graduate to submit. The second thing we look at would be the English language test. So there are 2 sets of tests that the doctor or the IMG will need to take. So first off would be the International English Language Testing System. So this must be the academics version of the test, and they will need to score at least 7 in all 4 areas: listening, reading, writing, and speaking, and an overall score of 7.5. The certificate is valid for no more than 2 years and must be in date at the point of registration with the GMC. For the occupational English test, so this needs to be the medical version, and the international medical graduate must pass with at least a B grade in each testing area. And again, this is only valid for 2 years to the point of GMC registration. So if a doctor has a month left on their English examination, when they do apply for the scheme, the college will ask them to retake that test, because there is a period of 2 to 6 months where we do look at all this evidence and we do evaluate the references, all the documents submitted. So there will be a waiting time more than a month. So the doctor needs to resit the English test if they submit it to the college and it expires whilst we are processing their application, because once it's only valid 2 years to the point of where they actually apply to the GMC, and that's when the college say your application's approved, you may now proceed with GMC registration. And this is really important that they do also achieve these grades in one sitting. They can't have 2 sittings where they have achieved the grade. It has to be in one sitting. The second thing we look at is employment history. So all international medical graduates must be engaged in medical practice for 3 out of 5 of the last 5 years and all of the last 12 months. The 12-month rule starts at the point of application for GMC registration is made. So the doctor or the IMG can't apply to the college and leave their role straight away. They do need to stay in full-time employment until we have looked at their application and approved the application. And the only thing that the GMC consider as time out of employment when you do make an application is contractual leave or contractual annual leave or contractual maternity leave per maternity or per child. So if an IMG has left their employment so that they can go on maternity leave for either a longer period of time or personal circumstances, unfortunately, if they have actually left or given their resignation in, we aren't able to sponsor them to the GMC. It needs to be contractual maternity leave. Clinical attachments and observerships are not counted as medical practice either. Once the international medical graduate applies to the college, we do ask them to submit 3 references to the college or referee details to the college. The college will then send off a reference request. So we usually send off 3. We do send off to all 3 and we try and collect all 3, but the minimum is 2. But one of those referees need to be someone who has supervised the international medical graduate's work within the last 12 months. The reference request that we do send will highlight a number of issues or good medical practice queries from the GMC, and we'll also ask the referee to sign off that the doctor has met foundation year 2 competencies and they believe that that doctor can be put forward for full registration. And the reason why they look at Foundation 2 competencies is because once the international medical graduate has registration, they are eligible to work within any specialty. So that's why they need to have passed or be signed off for Foundation Year 2 competencies. We also ask that the international medical graduate sends a certificate of good standing to the GMC. We have recently discussed this with the GMC, and this can be sent within the 3 months before we are ready to sponsor them. This is because the GMC, once it has passed that 3-month period, the GMC will request a new certificate of good standing. And often, or in some countries, it is quite difficult, or there is quite a time delay, or this does cause time delays in order to obtain this. The other examples that an IMG might want to add to their evidence is if they have passed PLAB tests or Part 1, or if they have failed. We do need to know if they have failed. Unfortunately, if they have failed a Part 1 or Part 2 PLAB test within the last 5 years, they won't be eligible for sponsorship. However, anything longer, we would ask the doctor to submit those results, and we would also just check with the GMC that they are happy for us to continue this application. FRC path examination results. So we do encourage all international medical graduates whilst they are in the UK to attempt the FRC path exam. So if they have Part 1, then we can also just make a note that they would be working to Part 2. Any details where there are gaps in the international medical graduate's employment, and any other documents that they might feel support their application. For MTI, we might sometimes ask for more personal documents, so marriage certificates where the surname is different, just so that we can confirm that the person that has made the application just has a different surname or has changed their name since they have qualified as a medical professional. So those are the GMC requirements for both the MTI and sponsorship scheme. So for both of them, we do sponsor to the GMC. However, they do change slightly when it comes to the visa applications. So with the college sponsorship scheme, the visa is usually sorted out by the trust or the medical resourcing team, and we just assist by helping the IMG gain registration. So we've always had a policy in the international team and at the college of assisting international medical graduates who wish to obtain further pathology training in the UK. And the sponsorship scheme offers assistance to those who are already advanced in their training or wishing to pursue a career in pathology by sponsoring these doctors from outside the UK for registration with the GMC. If they do go through this route, the IMG does not need to take the PLAB examination. Sometimes there is a little bit of confusion where the doctor might feel like they have to also take the PLAB examinations, but if they come through sponsorship, they do not need PLAB. So the sponsorship route will also usually be a specialty training post that has substantive educational component that leads to a recognizable training outcome. And sponsorship is intended to apply to the 3 distinct groups below. So doctors who are wishing to apply for entry to recognized specialty training in the UK. So this could be a LAT post or approved by the deanery. Doctors who wish to train in the UK for a limited period outside of their recognized specialty training program, or doctors who have made an application to the GMC for CSER, who have been recommended to undertake further training in the UK. So this is just, again, what IMGs we do look at. So usually international medical graduates are advanced in their chosen pathology specialty. So we do know that a lot of the doctors that actually come in through both sponsorship and MTI are already consultants within their home country. However, if they want to advance their career in their home country or come to the UK, then they are often asked to do some foreign training, either in the UK, Australia, or the US. And then they might come here for a period of time. And And these are the training posts that can be sponsored. So specialty training program, fixed term specialty training appointments, locum appointments for training, and honorary supernumerary posts. So please note that all posts, whatever the designation, must be an APS approved practice setting. This is a mandatory requirement and not optional. And under no circumstances are we able to sponsor doctors as locum consultants or consultants to the GMC. It will only ever be for the posts that we've been over. And then all the approved practice settings can also be found on our website, but these are just what we would look at, and it would go to the chairperson for evaluation as well, who would look at the job description to ensure that this has been met. And then we also do allow doctors to apply to the sponsorship scheme if they have not secured a post yet. So what we would do is we would carry out the GMC checks and just make sure that they are eligible for sponsorship. And then we'd ask the international medical graduate to remain in full-time employment, and we would issue them with something called a pending status letter. This letter just confirms that the college has gone through their evidence, and we do think that this candidate is suitable for sponsorship. However, they have not secured a role yet, so we aren't able to sponsor them to the GMC. The reason why we don't sponsor to the GMC until they have secured a post is because they can leave an employment and then they will no longer be eligible for working in the UK because they haven't been working in the last 12 months or the full 12 months. And that is in place also to reassure the GMC that the doctor or the IMG is up to speed with any training components or any changes, or just also their medical practice. They have been engaged in medical practice, so they are able to come to the UK and start practicing. They won't be a settling in period other than just getting used to the NHS system. So the sponsorship refers to GMC sponsorship under the scheme. As I mentioned before, the hospital, the trust will be responsible for assisting the IMG in their visa arrangements. The hospital or trust will also require the IMG to provide evidence of funding if the post is not funded, and the college are unable to financially sponsor any international medical graduates. The college do not hold any lists of current vacancies within the NHS, and any IMGs should source these separately. And we do recommend to all our IMGs to look at NHS job site or BMJ job site. So that is the sponsorship scheme. I'm just going to pause there. I just want to check if there are any questions about the sponsorship scheme before I move over to the medical training initiative.
Sorry, can I ask about sorry, I joined late, but I just wanted to ask about the funding. So the funding has to be provided by the trust which employs, and because I was under the impression that that was the RC Path funding these posts, or I'm wrong, probably.
So we don't financially sponsor any international medical graduates or their posts. I will go through the medical training initiative, which is slightly different because usually with the medical training initiative, actually not usually, almost always, the international medical graduate will have funding from their home country, either a postgraduate institution or a recognized educational establishment. But if they are being sponsored to the GMC register under the sponsorship scheme, then it is important that either the trust have the funding or I'm not too familiar with exactly with the tier 2 visa because we don't generally look after this. However, the medical resourcing team will need to check the funding and what they are eligible for. In some cases, I think the doctor can use their own funding for a tier 2. But again, if this is a limited post, then they probably, if the visa is just a short visa, they might be eligible to come over on an observership or some kind of training for a short period of time. But other than that, the hospital would need to actually sponsor them financially as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions, or shall I move on to the MTI scheme? Okay.
Hi, Rachel here. Just if I can make a comment at this stage. What's absolutely clear to me is that just how much rigor goes into the college process and why it takes quite a lot of time and to and fro. And I know that was one of the issues that was raised. It was implied that the college was being pernickety or obstructive or not wanting to support these candidates. But really useful to know exactly what all of the steps are involved. So thank you.
That's a pleasure. So we do also have, I think there is at the moment a slight increase in applications as travel restrictions have also eased after the pandemic. So that's also why we have been really, really busy with these applications. Also, the scheme is growing and we are keeping up with the scheme. It's just we have to make sure we check that the candidate is eligible for GMC registration. That is essential, and that does require thorough checking of all those documents that we do need the international medical graduate to supply as well.
Rachel, if it's Jo here, if I could just add as well, if the GMC become concerned at any point that the college is not carrying out its due diligence around these applications, then we do put the whole scheme at risk. They can withdraw permission for the college to run both the sponsorship and the MTI schemes, which is another reason why we're very, very careful about making sure that we meet all of the requirements of the scheme at all times, because skipping over things for one candidate could actually have a huge detrimental impact on future international medical graduates who might want to use this scheme.
Thank you, Jo. We also get audited by the GMC, where they do ask us to submit all the evidence that we have collected in all our checks every year, and they can also audit us whenever if they do think we have skipped a check on an application, they can actually ask the college to submit an audit to them. So as Jo said, if we don't carry out these checks, then we do put our schemes at risk, and that means no international medical graduates can apply for the scheme. Doesn't matter where they are in the UK, they won't be able to apply if the GMC do become quite concerned that we aren't taking these checks seriously.
Thank you. That makes perfect sense. Do you want to go on?
Sure. So then we have the medical training initiative. So this is the MTI scheme. So this is a slightly different scheme, and we'll go into a bit more detail now. But we work quite closely with both the GMC and the Academy of Medical Royal Colleges with the scheme. So the MTI scheme was introduced, I think, in 2014, and it is designed to allow medical graduates to come to the UK and undertake clinical training in the NHS for a maximum of 24 months before they have to return to their home country, providing they have support from the relevant Royal Medical College. So the primary purpose of the MTI scheme is to contribute to improving the quality of healthcare in developing countries. This scheme aims to share knowledge, experience, and best practice which benefits the international doctor, or the IMG, who gets training and development from the UK or in the NHS. It brings in international medical graduates from overseas regions, which also means that those international medical graduates are bringing their knowledge and their skills and their experience to the NHS. And also it benefits the NHS, which has spare training capacity, and these international medical graduates fill these capacities by sorry, I've lost my train of thought. They bring their skills into the NHS. These doctors will also come on a Tier 5 government authorized exchange visa, also known as a GAE visa, and we help the MTI doctors, together with the Academy of Medical Royal Colleges, gain a certificate of sponsorship, which is what they need for their visa application and to come to the UK. So just one thing that isn't in the slide about the MTI scheme is, as I mentioned before, doctors or international medical graduates on the scheme usually have funding from their home country, and that funding would allow them to come to the UK without the NHS supporting them. So that is the main difference in the sponsorship scheme and the MTI scheme. The MTI scheme is a Tier 5 visa where the college helps the international medical graduate obtain their visa, and the Tier 2 is for the sponsorship, and their visa is sorted out by the medical resourcing team or by the hospital or trust.